Naruto fans love to argue about who's stronger, but let's be real, half the time, the answer is just whoever has the craziest dojutsu. So in this video, I'm gonna walk you through all 15 dojutsu ever revealed in both Naruto and Boruto. And at the very end, we'll compare the best of the best to finally answer the big question, which dojutsu in Naruto is actually the strongest? Spoiler alert, the rinnegan is not the strongest. Alright, to kick things off, we have the OG. And honestly, the most famous special eye in all of shonen history, number 1, the sharingan. It's one of the 3 great dojutsu, along with the byakugan and rinnegan. And while its ultimate ancestor was Kaguya's rinne sharingan, the sharingan first appeared with Indra Otsutsuki in the manga, and with the Sage of Six Paths in the anime. Fundamentally, it's a genetic Kage genkai that selectively manifests among uchiha members, and its awakening is always connected to a powerful emotional trigger. The lore makes it clear that when an uchiha experiences a powerful emotional state, be it stress, loss, or even a profound desire to protect someone, their brain releases a special form of chakra. This chakra then affects the optic nerves, which transforms the eye and awakens the sharingan. I bet your high school teacher never taught you this, but this is the literal pseudo-scientific explanation for the clan's famous curse of hatred. It's also why in chapter 619, the sharingan is described as the eye that reflects the heart. Once unlocked, the sharingan gives 2 primary abilities, the Eye of Insight and the Eye of Hypnotism. The Eye of Insight's all about perception, understanding, and basically seeing the world with clarity. With it, the user can see chakra in color and even notice the smallest irregularities. In battle, this means they can predict an enemy's next move by just reading tiny muscle twitches, dodge with perfect timing, or even read hand seals to figure out what jutsu's coming. On top of that, the sharingan lets its wielder copy techniques with insane accuracy. If someone shows them a jutsu once, they can mimic it almost perfectly, as long as they have the physical ability and elemental mastery to back it up. Sasuke, with just 2 tomoe, was able to catch up to Lee's taijutsu proficiency with 1 month of training. To be fair, his eyes were already broken down Lee's taijutsu, he just needed the physical training to get his body up to speed. Now, if you mature your sharingan further to 3 tomoe, you can do what Kakashi does. In his fight against Zabuza, Kakashi was able to not just understand, but also copy Zabuza's special water-style jutsu in real time. It doesn't get more disrespectful than that. Of course, that's also because Kakashi already had full mastery of water release. And this is just one thing that keeps the sharingan from being a total cheat code. You still need mastery of a jutsu's elemental release if you want to copy it. Kakashi was able to copy 1,000 different jutsu throughout his career as the copy ninja, because he had mastery of all 5 elements and impressive physical stats. The Eye of Hypnotism, on the other hand, is about control. Through eye contact, a user can cast genjutsu that plants suggestions, pulls information, or even forces someone to act against their will. And at higher levels, it goes beyond just a simple suggestion. Like how in chapter 501, Obito was able to force the Nine Tails out with just a glare from his sharingan. The point is, the sharingan is basically the plot's eye because it's as versatile as the author needs it to be. And honestly, that versatility is what also makes the whole sharingan versus byakugan debate sound a little silly. Everyone thinks the sharingan's superior, but that's not actually the case. Just keep watching. I'll tell you more about my thoughts on the sharingan versus byakugan debate in a bit, but for now, let's move on to our number 2 spot, where we talk about what happens when a sharingan user experiences the ultimate trauma of loss. Number 2, the mangekyo sharingan is an evolved form of the sharingan that's activated by experiencing immense trauma, specifically the death of someone close to the user. It's the ultimate expression of the Uchiha's curse, and the design is different for every single user because it reflects the individuality of their trauma. As for the eye itself, it's described as the heavenly eyes that see the truth of all creation without obstruction, and that's not an exaggeration at all. The mangekyo grants its wielder unique powers that literally break the natural laws of the ninja world. For example, Itachi's mangekyo casts Tsukiyomi, an illusion that could make seconds of real time feel like days of torture to the victim. His other eye cast Amaterasu, the black flames that burn anything in the focal point. It's literally the highest level of fire release in the story. Then you have Shisui's Koto Matsukami, which could cast an absolute genjutsu that manipulates thoughts so perfectly that victims don't even realize they're being controlled. It's second only to the infinite Tsukomi when it comes to genjutsu effectiveness. There's Obito's infamous Kamui, the power to warp himself or objects into a pocket dimension. And speaking of Obito, when Conan tried to take him out with 600 billion paper bombs, she timed them him to go off for 10 straight minutes. This should have killed him, especially since Kamui could only keep him intangible for 5 minutes. But Obito just busted out the Izanagi and literally rewrote reality to survive. You see, the Izanagi along with the Izanami are two forbidden mangekyo techniques. The Izanagi lets the user erase the boundary between reality and illusion for a short moment, and characters like Obito and Madara have used it to turn their deaths into, nah, I'd live. The only cost is that the eye that cast it goes blind, but honestly, that sounds like a bargain, considering you can literally cheat death. Now, the Izanami also causes you to go blind in the eye that casts it, but it was created specifically as a countermeasure against the Izanagi. Where Izanagi lets someone escape their destiny, Izanami forces the victim to accept it by trapping them in an infinite time loop. The victim is made to endlessly relive a series of events, but it's not as bad as Giorno does Diavolo with Gold Experience Requiem because it actually gives you a way out. Like we saw with Kabuto, when Itachi used it on him, you just need to stop resisting and accept reality for what it is. Now, even after all of that, we're still not done with the mangekyo, because there's also the Susanoo. This is the humanoid avatar of chakra that the mangekyo sharingan users can summon. It is the ultimate defense and offense of the Uchiha clan, and it's also called the incarnation of the user's spirit. That means each Susanoo is unique to its user. Sasuke's Susanoo wielded a bow, Itachi's had the legendary Totsuka blade, and the Yatamira's shield, and Madara's Susanoo was an aura merchant. Madara also gave us that iconic moment where he completely flexed the 5 Kage, and then, just for fun, asked if they would like his shadow clones to use Susanoo too. And finally, I want to talk about the one time in the story where we got to see the theoretical full potential of a mangekyo in all its Uchiha glory. It was at the end of the war when Kakashi Hatake, with both of Obito's mangekyo sharingan, manifested a perfect Susanoo and used Kamui Shuriken to subdue Kaguya Otsutsuki. And that right there was the true power of Obito's mangekyo, without any rinnegan or Eternal Mangekyo buffs. And speaking of Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, it's at number 3. You see, the mangekyo itself is a double-edged sword. It causes severe long-term damage to the user's regular eyesight, which eventually leads to complete blindness. And this drawback can only be countered by transplanting another pair of mangekyo Sharingan from a close relative, like a sibling, to create the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. I'd say this narrative choice perfectly reflects Uchiha's cycle of violence. And as Madara personally said in chapter 662, the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan is proof, and Uchiha has continued to push forward despite experiencing great losses. The only characters to ever wield the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan are Sasuke and Madara. This also makes them quite literally the two most proficient users of the Sharingan in history, since they're the only ones who truly maxed it out. Alright, moving on to number 4, it's the rinnegan. If the mangekyo sees the truth of creation, then the rinnegan is the eye of literal legend. It's said that in times of great disorder, the person who wields the rinnegan is set down from the heavens to become either a god of creation who will bring peace to the world, or a god of destruction who will reduce everything to nothingness. The first person on earth to ever wield the rinnegan was the sage of 6 paths himself, Hagoromo Otsutsuki. Now, this eye grants its user the ability to master any of the 5 elemental nature releases and the 6 paths technique, which is basically a full set of overpowered abilities. Let me break them down for you. First up is the Deva path, which is all about gravity manipulation. This is what Pain used when he said almighty push and wiped out the entire Leaf village just like that. There's the human path, which lets you literally rip someone's soul out. We saw Pain use this chilling ability on Fukasaku, one of Jiairo's toads. The animal path lets you summon giant creatures without using hand signals, like the giant chameleon, centipede, and multi-headed dog Pain used during the invasion. Next, you have the Preta path, which absorbs chakra-based attacks. Pain used it to absorb Naruto's rising shuriken and even tried to drain his sage mode. The Naraka path is for healing or interrogation, using a giant spirit head called the King of Hell. Pain used this to repair his other bodies mid-fight. Finally, the Asura path basically turns your body into a weapon. This is how Pain pulled out missile launchers, extra arms, and even a laser face while fighting Kakashi. And that's not all, because you also got the extra outer path, which is easily the craziest one. This path gives the user control over life and death through the rinne rebirth, like when Nagato used the Samsara of Heavenly Life technique to revive everyone he killed in the Leaf Village. It also lets you summon chakra chains to bind tailed beasts, something both Madara and Obito used. On top of that, it gives you those black chakra rods that can control other bodies. This is is how Nagato was able to control the 6 paths of pain. The user can even sense invisible barriers between worlds and understand chakra on a much deeper level than normal shinobi ever could. Plus, there's the ability to summon and control the Geto statue. Now, there's a good fan question. Why didn't Madara and Sasuke run around using every path ability like Nagato did with the 6 paths of pain and Obito did with the Jinchuriki bodies? The answer is simple. Nagato and Obito, with their multiple bodies, could multitask each path power separately in a way that one single individual can't. Plus, let's be honest, it's not practical to manage all those abilities at once. Sasuke and Madara would rather stick to their own fighting styles. Not to mention, rinnegan wielders also get a unique extra ability on top of the standard 6 paths. For example, Madara's rinnegan had the unique power of limbo, which lets him create up to 4 invisible shadow clones of himself that exist in a parallel dimension overlapping the real world. These limbo clones can't be seen by anyone except other rinnegan wielders. They also can't be touched by anyone except someone with 6 paths sage mode, but they can still interact with the real world. Basically, only Sasuke could see the limbo clones, while only Naruto could hurt them. Sasuke's rinnegan, on the other hand, came with Amenote Jikara, the ability to swap places instantly with a person or object at a certain range. Sasuke used this at a great effect by teleporting himself or others in the blink of an eye to outmaneuver enemies. His rinnegan could also open portal gateways to other dimensions. This was crucial for chasing Kaguya and for hunting Otsutsuki in Boruto. Speaking of Otsutsuki hunting, let's talk about Urashiki. He could transform his eyes into different forms of the rinnegan, each with its own space-time ability. When his eyes turned red with 6 tomoe, he could use Yomotsu Hirasaka to travel between dimensions and launch surprise attacks. When they turned blue and tomoe-less, he could rewind time by a few seconds. This was usually a defensive ability, but by repeating it, he could predict the immediate future and counter perfectly. And all of this just goes to show how absurd and versatile the rinnegan can be, even in comparison to the mangekyo sharingan. Now, at number 5, we have the predecessor to both the rinnegan and the sharingan, the rinne sharingan. The eye first manifested in Kaguya Otsutsuki after she ate the forbidden fruit of the Shinju tree, and it later awakened in Madara Uchiha after he became the 10 Tails Jinchuriki. So far, these two are also the only characters to ever achieve it. The rinne sharingan's most infamous ability is the infinite Tsukuyomi, the ultimate genjutsu. It allows the user to trap the entire world in an illusion. Everyone on the planet gets caught in an eternal dream of bliss, all while their chakra is slowly siphoned away and they eventually mutate into white zetsu. But the infinite Tsukuyomi isn't the only ability of the rinne sharingan. As we see in chapter 682, Kaguya also used it to instantly teleport herself and those around her to a series of alternate dimensions. Now, you may think this is the strongest eye in all of Naruto. Well, believe it or not, Shibai Otsutsuki, the single strongest character in the entire Naruto and Boruto storyline, didn't have this eye. At least, not from what we've seen so far. But he did have the byakugan, which is what we're going to talk about next at number 6. The byakugan is the all-seeing white eye of the Hyuga clan, who descended from Hamura Otsutsuki. Now, while it never got the same respect as the sharingan and the rinnegan, it's still absurdly useful. It gives the user nearly 360-degree field of vision, with just a tiny blind spot at the back of the neck, as well as the ability to see through solid objects and across crazy distances. By the last Naruto the movie, Hinata could see up to at least 20 kilometers, while Kaguya's byakugan could cover pretty much the entire globe. It also lets you track extremely fast movements and pinpoint chakra signatures. This means you can easily tell a real body from clones just by how their chakra looks. And because of this level of clarity, a user can follow attacks and movements so precisely that even the predictive abilities from other eyes can get completely canceled out. But where the byakugan truly shines is close combat. It lets you see the body's chakra pathways and all the tiny chakra pressure points. And that brings us to the gentle fist style used by the Hyuga clan. Instead of just hitting hard, they can simply shut your chakra flow down by jabbing those points. One clean strike to a vital node, and you may not be able to flow chakra at all. This is exactly what made the Hyuga clan the masters of taijutsu. They knew exactly where to poke you to render you unable to do a thing. Even the blind spot at the back of the neck seemed like it was just there to keep the byakugan users from being invincible. I mean, this is why Naruto and Sasuke had to attack Kaguya from her blind spots or use distractions. And if it's not obvious already, the byakugan can objectively perceive chakra with more clarity than the sharingan. This brings us back to the question I mentioned a few minutes ago. Sharingan versus byakugan, which is better? First off, unlike the sharingan, the byakugan's activation isn't tied to trauma or extreme emotions. It's genetically straightforward straightforward. Most Hyuga have it from birth, and they just have to learn to use it properly. Himawari, who isn't even full Hyuga, was able to awaken hers at the age of 3. She even managed to see chakra points and easily knock out Naruto right after awakening it. But I guess that's more about her potential than it is about the byakugan. Still, this already makes a much healthier option than the sharingan, especially in the modern-day Naruto world, where the Hyuga clan no longer enforces the seal on members of the branch family. Another huge advantage of the byakugan is its use in reconnaissance and analysis. In a war setting, a byakugan user is essentially a living drone that can scan wide areas for enemies. It can even increase the effectiveness of a user's genjutsu. We learned this in chapter 671, when it's revealed that Kaguya combined her byakugan's vast range with the infinite Tsuyokomi to subjugate nations. And in Boruto chapter 10, Momoshiki claimed his byakugan could read the fate of others, though he could not see his own. By the way, fun fact, Momoshiki's and Urashiki's byakugan are gold colored, but that's just for aesthetics. Kaguya's byakugan was way stronger than theirs, and it wasn't golden. Alright, let's finally answer the question. Obviously, neither eye is subjectively superior. It's all about the use case. The byakugan has a nearly 360-degree field of vision and can see through walls and across vast distances, which makes it the ultimate recon eye. The sharingan, on the other hand, is the ultimate combat eye with its prediction, copying, and genjutsu powers. I'd say that for scouting, infiltration, support roles, countering chakra-based techniques, and nice surgical precision in taijutsu, the byakugan is a clear winner. Plus, it also has built-in anti-genjutsu software. The sharingan, however, is better for high-level one-on-one duels, countering and copying enemy techniques, and mental manipulation. Though, what if you had one sharingan and one byakugan? Well, Kishimoto once joked about this. He said that if a sharingan user and a byakugan user had a baby, the kid would have one sharingan and one byakugan. Now, while the byakugan is the all-seeing white eye, its evolution, the tenseigan, is called the reincarnation eye. And that's what we have at number 7. You could say the tenseigan is to the byakugan like the mangekyo is to the sharingan. I've even used that analogy in many other videos, but it's not the best analogy because you need Otsutsuki chakra to awaken the tenseigan. So if we're drawing parallels, and if we think of the rinnegan as the final evolution of the sharingan, then the tenseigan is to the byakugan what the rinnegan is to the sharingan. After all, both require Otsutsuki chakra to awaken. For example, Madara only awakened the rinnegan after he awakened Otsutsuki chakra by combining his uchiha cells with Hashirama's senju cells. Similarly, Toneri Otsutsuki had Otsutsuki blood, but his own byakugan was sealed. But after he plugged in Hanabai's byakugan into his eye sockets, he was able to awaken the tenseigan in just a few days because the Otsutsuki blood was already there. He then planned on using the tenseigan to crash the moon into the earth, wipe out humanity, and restore the planet in his own vision. With the tenseigan, Toneri could control a massive golem and enter tenseigan chakra mode, which gave him flight, truth-seeking balls, and gravity manipulation. And Toneri's golden wheel reincarnation explosion is the most absurd tenseigan technique. It's essentially a massively amped up chakra slash of light that Toneri used to try and cut the moon in half. Wait, how did the moon get better in Boruto after that? And we'll get to Boruto exclusive dojutsu in just a minute, but first, let's also go over some filler dojutsu. Number 8 is the Ketsuryugan of the Chinoiki clan. It's called the Blood Dragon Eye and is said to be comparable to the 3 great dojutsu. When activated, the Ketsuryugan grants 2 main abilities. First, its users can cast genjutsu, not just through eye contact, but also through physical skin contact. They can even probe a victim's mind to extract information. Their second ability is controlling anything with a high iron concentration. This includes manipulating their own blood or even another person's blood. To do this, the user must infuse their chakra into the target. We saw this when Chino cut Sasuke's wrist so she could use her technique on him. Unfortunately, the Chinoki clan's history is pretty tragic. Back in the Warring States period, they were one of many mercenary ninja clans in the Land of Lightning. A woman from the clan even married the country's daimyo, but when he died shortly after, the first wife blamed her and the entire clan. Many believed her lies, which caused the whole clan to be banished from the country. And the Uchiha were hired to carry out this task of essentially forcing them all out of the Land of Lightning. Many died, but a few survivors settled in the Valley of Hell in the Land of Hot Water, and only a handful like Chino and En Oyashiro are around in the modern day. Coming in at number 9 is the Keki Genkai of a boy named Ranmaru. There's a lot of speculation that it might just be a form of Ketsuryugan, but the anime gave them different designs. It's also worth noting that this eye is more similar to the byakugan, while the Ketsuryugan is more like the sharingan. Ranmaru can see and hear across vast distances, see through objects, and sense chakra with incredible clarity. His dojutsu can also shut down other visual abilities, deceive sensory powers, and even let him read thoughts or detect life force beyond normal chakra sensing. And on top of that, he can transfer his own life force to heal someone who's on the verge of death. Now, Ranmaru himself believed his dojutsu was superior to the byakugan, but that was really just a case of fish in a small pond. Next at number 10, we have Shion's dojutsu from Naruto, The Will of Fire movie. Shion is a priestess of the land of demons, and her dojutsu basically allowed her to see a person's future, specifically their eventual death. But here's the thing, it activates involuntarily, so it doesn't have many practical use cases. It's just a straightforward dojutsu that acts as a defense mechanism to protect the priestess. For example, if she's about to die, her dojutsu will warn her past self and tell her who was around her at the time. She's noted to have made over 100 of these predictions and has never been wrong once, at least not until she forcefully defied her prediction about Naruto protecting him. Anyway, her dojutsu aside, you may not remember this, but she was pretty smitten with Naruto and was openly talking about having children with him by the end of the movie. I wonder what kind of dojutsu you would get if you mixed this dojutsu with them Uzumaki genes. Moving on, number 11 is Yome's dojutsu. She is a genin from the Sand Village, and her eye allows her to track enemies by dilating her pupils to see their reflections in tiny water droplets. This ability is only used for tracking, and even at that, it's honestly inferior to the byakugan. Plus, Yome is sensitive to bright flashes of light, which means all you need is a simple flash bomb to render her dojutsu completely useless. Number 12 is a dojutsu called Magan. It's actually from a movie that screens inside the Boruto world in episode 8. There's a character called Kage who uses this dojutsu called Magan, the evil eye, which grants him the ability to paralyze individuals through sight alone. Okay, that's one Boruto exclusive dojutsu, but it's not canon. However, the next three are. Coming in at number 13 is the kokugan, or the black eye. Now, calling the kokugan black eye and putting it at number 13 makes it sound cursed. In a way, it kinda is. It belongs to the Otsutsuki clan, and so far only Ishiki Otsutsuki and Kawaki, who inherited thanks to the Ishiki's Kama, have been shown to possess the eye. As for what it does, well, the Kokugan allows its wielder to use the Sukuna Hikona, a shinjutsu technique that instantly shrinks themselves or any inanimate object or non-living matter they can see. And to go along with that technique is the Daikokuten, which enables the user to store anything they've shrunk in a dimension where time doesn't even flow. That's not all either. The Kokugan can also summon large black cubes that disrupt the technique of a sensory type individual. It can allow the user to estimate their lifespan through a flame-like shadow, or open a conventional space-time portal, which can also be used to access that timeless dimension without having to use Daikokuten. In chapter 77, this is what Kawaki used to forcibly teleport Naruto and Hinata to a different dimension. It's crazy because you can manipulate matter, control space-time, and even gauge life itself. No wonder Ishiki was so disgustingly overpowered. Okay, after Kawaki, there's Boruto's dojutsu. At number 14, we have Jougan, the Pure Eye. It's easily the most mysterious dojutsu in the entire story because so far only one character has ever awakened it, and it's just Boruto and no one else. Though in episode 65, it was made clear that the Jougan is linked to the Otsutsuki clan, who describe it as a troublesome and a power deeply tied to their lineage. At first, Boruto couldn't control it. The Jougan would activate on its own when reacting to danger or when it's focused on certain people or objects. But now, as a teenager, he can activate it at will. As for what it does, well, the Jougan allows Boruto to see the entire chakra pathway system right down to the chakra points. This is similar to the byakugan, but it's not the same thing. In fact, after the release of episode 15, an animator named Shengji Huan clarified in a blog post that the Jougan is neither the byakugan nor the tenseigan. He described it as being spiritually similar to Naruto's ability to sense negative emotions and Hinata's ability to visualize. But the thing is, it's 2025 and we still don't know what it's actually about. What we do know is that the jougan gives Boruto dimensional awareness. He can see through normal invisible barriers between worlds and even predict where space-time portals like Yomotsu Hirasaka are going to appear. That's actually pretty impressive, considering Yomotsu Hirasaka is the protagonist of all space-time jutsu, and only characters like Kaguya and Urashiki have shown to use it. Another thing is that even if Boruto's jougan eye is damaged in its normal state, he doesn't lose it. The eye still functions and retains all its powers. Finally, at number 15, we have the dojutsu of the single strongest character in the entire Naruto and Boruto storyline, and it's Shibai's Senrigan. Now, while Shibai had the rinnegan and the byakugan, this one seems to be his main thing. The Senrigan was manifested in Ada's left eye after Amato transplanted DNA from Shibai's remains into her. And what it does is it allows the user to project their consciousness anywhere in the world to see and hear distant events as if they were right there. Ada herself compared it to being able to freely access security cameras hidden in every corner of the world. But it gets crazier than that. The Senrigan allows you to browse past events and pick out individual scenes to watch, all the way back to the moment of your own birth. And its perception can even reach into other dimensions. Of course, there are some limitations. For one, it doesn't allow the user to see any event that happened before they were born, and it can't peer into the future. It also can't perceive targets on a spiritual plane, like the mental communication between Boruto and Momoshiki, or track targets that are physically imperceptible, such as the shrunken Kawaki. Plus, a Senrigan user's understanding of what they witness is still limited by their own knowledge and interpretation. But I want to remind you that it's only the true omnipotent dojutsu in the story. Yes, even if kokugan gives you shinjutsu powers, it's not shinjutsu itself, it's only the case for the Senrigan. And by the way, just like how Madara's rinnegan never reached its full potential with Nagato, or how Yamato, despite being cloned from Hashirama's cells, could never match Hashirama's mastery of wood release, the Senrigan's true power won't be seen until Shibai himself uses it. And that brings us back to the main question, which dojutsu in Naruto is actually the strongest? Now, when I say strongest, I don't mean the most useful in a fight or the most practical for a shinobi. I'm talking about the absolute skill of the dojutsu's power and the kind of broken abilities it brings to the table. With that definition in mind, the answer is clear. It's the Senrigan. Unlike the kokugan, which only grants access to certain shinjutsu techniques, the Senrigan itself is shinjutsu. It gives omnipresent surveillance, dimensional reach, and retroactive sight into past events. In terms of sheer skill, and especially with its connection to the concept of omnipotence, it is above every other dojutsu. That said, the rinnegan is still the most versatile and useful dojutsu for practical combat. Just look at the evidence. Shibai had both the rinnegan and byakugan alongside his Senrigan, and Kaguya still had her byakugan even with the rinne sharingan. Even Ishiki, with his kokugan's shinjutsu abilities, kept his byakugan. This shows that even with completely broken hacks, you still need fundamental dojutsu abilities. But as we saw with the Sage of Six Paths, the rinnegan alone gave him a complete and fully versatile set of abilities without relying on any other dojutsu. Even the third eye in the center of his forehead is just a red rinnegan marking. So, to give you the final answer, the strongest dojutsu in terms of skill and raw ceiling of power is the Senrigan, second is the kokugan, third is the rinne sharingan. But the most useful in actual combat is the rinnegan. Of course, if you want to disagree with me, we can continue the conversation in the comments section down below. And if you want to see more specialized from anime, you should definitely check out my video on every special eye in anime.